Okay, happy Wednesday, and it's the day before the Thanksgiving break for our college. So I hope you're all getting to the point where your busy schedules are winding down a little bit and you're getting a chance to prepare to have that time spent, whether it's with your loved ones, family, or otherwise. I hope that you get a chance to have a little bit of a breaker and definitely a well-deserved chance to take a moment to spend time with whoever it is that you want to spend the time with. On this week's learning material, what I have scheduled for us is to look at the autonomic nervous system. And I've intentionally kept the material a little lighter for this week with the hopes that it allows you to have that chance to have a break for the Thanksgiving, and also intentionally keeping in mind that we kind of planned this course to be a little bit more front loaded. I know that students have many classes, you have many other things than just this course going on. So as we're approaching the final stretch, hopefully you'll find out that the workload is a little bit lighter. I do have a plan for this session for us. I want to talk first about the end of semester survey a little bit. We'll have a look of the weekly homework. And again, you'll notice that the weekly homework is intentionally a little lighter. We'll spend bulk of the time today reviewing the key points from the chapter material as it relates to the this week's material. Of course, I encourage you to look at the full lecture videos on Canvas, other materials that I provided there, and also utilize your textbook. I often emphasize to my students that those homework assignments are a really good way to kind of do the learning and have on the side as you're studying the material. So don't feel that that has to come at the end as a completion. It can very much be part of the learning journey as well. So having said all that, we are approaching the end of the semester, which is very exciting time. And as we're approaching end of the semester, there's a couple of things that we as a college want to do, and I as your instructor want to do. And one of the things that we want to do, we want to learn about your experience in this class. So we always conduct a survey. That survey is completely anonymous and it's administered by the district that the Chandler Gilbert Community College belongs. So the larger system behind individual colleges. And how this survey works, that you should have received to your email. And this is going to be, I believe, the at maricopa.edu email address. A message that has a heading that's something along the lines CGCC Teacher Evaluation for BIO201. I believe that the first set of reminders has been already sent out. So there was an initial message, and then you'll keep receiving those reminders that, hey, we would really love to learn about your experience on this course. And that survey is an individual one. So I would ask you to please complete it. Those surveys are used as we develop these courses further, but also as we assess us instructors, how we're doing, where we are doing a good job, and where we can do even better. Students often think that you get surveyed a lot, which is true. But I will say that this survey really carries weight and meaning. So obviously, if you have had good experiences on this class, I would greatly appreciate you sharing about those. If there's things where I can also do better, I'm definitely open to learning of those. I definitely try to do changes every semester to these courses. For me, what I ask is that you are mindful that that is an assessment element, a component that goes to my supervisors. So we want to be mindful of the language that we use. I want you to be honest. I want you to be authentic. But let's just remember it goes to the big bosses at the top of the food chain. So it would be super helpful and greatly appreciated if you could complete that feedback survey. Like I said, I don't have a way of sharing a link to that survey because it is your individual one. You will have received a unique link to your at maricopa.edu address. So look it up from there. I do, though, want to encourage my students to do that, complete that survey. And what I ask you to do is once you get to the final page of that survey, it gives you a confirmation screen where it says that thank you for submitting this survey. I ask you to grab a screenshot of that, or if you don't have an option to take screenshot, even if you take your own mobile phone and grab a picture with that, that would work, but somehow capture that you completed that survey. Then you can go to a learning module that's at the towards the end of our learning modules. It's labeled as end of semester feedback, and there is a submission area that says end of semester feedback. And I ask you to submit the screenshot that you completed this survey there. If for some reason you don't manage to capture a screenshot, I know some of you might have done that survey already. So other thing that you can do is just simply type into that assignment area the date and approximately time when you took it. Obviously, it is an anonymous survey. I will not go and pull up whether you submitted it at that date, at that time, but I do want to give you a chance to still be able to let me know that you did it. Because if you let me know that you completed that end of semester survey, I will be awarding points for that. And I would also, in addition, those points counting towards your final grade. I would just personally greatly appreciate it. Like I said, if you have had good experiences, I really, really do hope that you're considering of sharing those with my supervisors. If there are things where I can do better, of course, I want to learn about those. Let's just try to keep the tone in a sense that it is suitable for their ears, so to speak. So please consider doing that survey. It's not a long survey. It's going to go through nicely. There's a lot of multiple choice questions. And then there's a couple of areas where you can type in further in details if you so choose to do. It's not required. That brings me to this week's homework assignments. Like I said, I intentionally designed it to be a little lighter. And I think that the date that we have there on the screen might be slightly mistaken. So let me correct that. I believe it's the December 1st when the homework is due. December 1st is the Sunday of this week. So we're following the same pattern as we normally do. So please try to get your homework submitted by the end of the week. I have received some messages from students who have noticed assignments that they missed in the past or would still like to try or would like to try again. I am totally open of opening those. If I haven't answered to you yet, I apologize. It's been a busy week, but you should be hearing from me today, and I will totally open if you missed any assignments. So please complete the Chapter 15 quiz. And I'm also asking you to complete the course evaluation that you should have received. And I think I already discussed about that if you do still want to attempt any assignments you missed, if you do still want to retake things, I'm definitely supportive of that, and I will gladly reopen those to me. Just message to me here on Canvas, and we'll take care of that. So with all that said, I think we're at the place where we're ready to start looking at the weekly learning material. And this week, our interest has been really on the autonomic nervous system. We've seen this diagram where I've kind of tried to organize different branches and different areas of the nervous system in a few different ways. And our focus today is on the autonomic nervous system. We'll also venture a little bit to mention about the somatic nervous system, just to kind of draw the difference between the autonomic and somatic. And we'll spend some time also talking about the differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of autonomic nervous system. So let's start by kind of first considering on a general level, what is the autonomic nervous system and why does it matter? Well, these are all mechanisms that we use to make adjustments to keep our body functioning optimally. This is a subconscious process, so it is automatic, as the name proposes. You don't have to choose to have this branch of nervous system activated and do its functions. So this is very much involuntary responses and very general responses. Some examples that I might share would be, for example, how your smooth muscles work, your smooth muscles around your blood vessels. So changes in your blood pressure would be a good example of the automatic nervous system constantly adjusting. We want to have high enough blood pressure so that there's tissue perfusion, but we don't want that blood pressure to be so high that it puts stress, for example, on the kidneys. Smooth muscle, a good example of that would be also in our digestive tract, regulating the flow of the material through the digestive tract. So again, that happens involuntarily, automatically, and it's very general responses. We're choosing that, okay, now we should move material from this body portion or this part of the digestive system to this portion. We also see heart as a really good example of an organ that's controlled largely by automatic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system is gonna be adjusting your heart rate, the stroke volume of the heart, so how much blood goes out of the heart at each contraction, and so on, based on your body's needs. So there's this constant adjustment or kind of a fine dance of making those changes based on what are the needs of your body. Another example that I mentioned on this slide would be our glands. And our glands work again through autonomic nervous system, regulating them. When do we want to release secretions from those glands and when we don't? So if you've considered all of these examples that I've just shared, they very much do sound like homeostasis and maintaining our body in homeostasis. So we see that this big theme that we started our classes with, homeostasis as a kind of a threshold concept for everything else, keeps popping up time and time again. And our autonomic nervous system plays crucial role in maintaining our body in a state of homeostasis, in that optimal conditions at that ideal set point. So now that we've talked in general about the autonomic nervous system, I think it's a good time for us to also venture a little bit of having a look of what does then somatic nervous system mean? Well, somatic nervous system is not the main focus of our this week's chapter. I do think it's worthwhile for us to look at it a little bit. So when we're talking about somatic nervous system, we're looking at the innervation of the skeletal muscles. So this is much more of responses on those, whereas the autonomic nervous system dealt with cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. We'll be doing some comparison and contrasting between the somatic and autonomic nervous systems. So whereas the somatic nervous system structure resembles closely of what we have learned so far on this course when we've talked about nervous system controlling things, controlling, for example, our skeletal muscles, we see that we have a cell body for the somatic nerve, and that cell body is located in the central nervous system. And then we have a single axon leaving that cell body from the central nervous system and going all the way to that target organ, which in this case for somatic nervous system would be our skeletal muscles. So very much of that predictable, simple pathway that we've been talking about earlier. But this is where autonomic nervous system gets a little bit more complex. Autonomic nervous system, which controlled, like we saw, our cardiac muscle, our smooth muscle, and our glands, actually works through a two-neuron pathway. So there's the first neuron that's located the cell body the within the central nervous system, and it runs from there. And then it joins to a second nerve. And this second nerve joining to the first nerve at that junction place is where we see an autonomic ganglion. And the second nerve then runs to the target organ, and that is known as a postganglionic neuron. So we're going to see preganglionic and postganglionic neuron in an autonomic nervous system pathway. Between those two, we see that autonomic ganglion. And this is actually quite important as we start making sense of how these nerves run, and could look more into that comparing the somatic and autonomic nervous system. And we'll do that in just a bit. But first, I wanted to also talk about the chemistry that's involved in both of these systems and how messages are passed onwards. So somatic nervous system that relied on this one neuron pathways uses acetylcholine to pass messages from the neuron to the target organ. And the effects of somatic nervous system nerves are very much of those of stimulation of the organs. So they kind of prompt them to do something. Autonomic nervous system instead, because we had two neuron pathway, they use on the preganglionic neuron acetylcholine to pass that message, and then on the postganglionic neuron we have an option either of using that acetylcholine again or using instead norepinephrine. So two different types of neurotransmitters that might play a role in there. Interestingly enough, autonomic nervous system can also have either an effect of stimulating or inhibiting the responses or effects on the target organs. So whereas somatic nervous system was always stimulating, autonomic nervous system can do either stimulation or inhibition. And as we think of the autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system, I do want to be very, very clear and highlight that there's a significant amount of overlap between these two systems. So we do have a tendency in the field of anatomy and physiology often to break down the material into different systems and into different parts. But in reality, there's a huge amount of overlap between these systems, and that's the case also in somatic and autonomic nervous systems. So it is especially these higher brain centers where we do a lot of regulation and coordination between these both systems. We also see that both spinal and cranial nerves contain fibers from both somatic and autonomic nervous system. And we also see that there's a physiological adaptations that involve both somatic and autonomic nervous system activities. So a lot of overlap there. And what I wanted to do next is focus on the two branches of the autonomic nervous system. So we're going to talk a little bit about sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of ANS. And when we talk about the parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system, the functions that are active when parasympathetic division of the nervous system is activated are very much to do with body's maintenance functions and conserving energy in the body, just kind of those general upkeep and regulatory processes. And these are often described as our rest and digest responses. So that gives us an idea that when parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system is active, we're really, for example, our digestive system is working actively. Our urinary system is working actively. These things that we need to keep our body going. Instead, when we look at the parasympathetic division, things like your heart rate wouldn't be raising, things that are needed for those immediate reactions and responses to stimuli, those can be at the resting stage. A good way of thinking about parasympathetic division is how you feel after your Thanksgiving meal. Since Thanksgiving is just around the corner, you're seeing all of those responses that you see at that time represented on the parasympathetic division. Sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system instead is often described as a fight or flight responses. So these are literally preparing either for your body to escape the situation or fight for its survival. So we're directing these resources to these immediate responses, often immediate responses to danger or a risk. Whereas the body's maintenance functions are not as much of a priority when the sympathetic division is activated. We'll have a look of some examples of parasympathetic and sympathetic division functions in just a little bit. But I also want to mention at this point that there's a lot of dual innovation between these two systems. Even though we present them as separate ones, there's actually a lot of kind of interaction of these, especially when it comes to our visceral organs. Both of these provide input to those, but the effects or the inputs seem to be almost like opposite in their effect. So again, we find ourselves pondering with this theme of homeostasis, and we find ourselves noticing that that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to keep that body in that optimal conditions. And sometimes it is an interplay of these two systems that help us to do that. So now I think it's a useful time for us to look at some further examples of the distinction between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. I mentioned earlier on that a good way of thinking about parasympathetic nervous system is that what's happening physiologically in your body after you have just finished enjoying that Thanksgiving meal and you sit down comfortably into that chair and in so-called just vegetate, whether it's socializing or watching TV, listening music or whatever it is, but you're really resting and digesting. During this time, your respiratory rate goes down, you breathe deeper and easily, you don't have to rush. Your heart rate, blood pressure also go down. You're in that relaxed state. Your digestive system and also your urinary system, however, are working optimally. We're really trying to extract the nutrients and energy from that food. We're really filtering the blood, producing that urine. So these are very much of those body's maintenance functions that we see when your parasympathetic nervous system is active. Sympathetic nervous system instead was described as these fight or flight responses, and we see responses like directing the blood to the organs that we need to activate to either fight for our survival or escape from situation. Good example would be, for example, our skeletal muscles. So either we're really preparing or to do that encounter or escape from that encounter. We're seeing that our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, our respiratory rate might go up, we breathe faster, we keep breathe more, bringing in more air to the body. So we're really preparing for that survival. Things like digestion or things like urinary system are not a priority when you're fighting for your survival. So those systems will be very much depressed instead. So I hope that that helps you to kind of compare and contrast the sympathetic and parasympathetic branch of autonomic nervous system. And now that we've had a look of that, I think it's going to be useful for us to compare also how the neurons within the sympathetic and parasympathetic branch of autonomic nervous system differ. So we see that most of the parasympathetic branches neurons originate either from cranial region of your body, so brain or the very uppermost parts of the spinal cord, and also from the very end of the spinal cord from the sacral region, so sacrum. These neurons that are part of the parasympathetic nervous system arising from the cranial and sacral region have very long preganglionic nerve. So that first nerve leaving the central nervous system is prominently long. Then we're going to see that ganglia. And the second nerve is going to be very, very, very short. It's in a closed vicinity of the effector organ. So first nerve leaving the central nervous system is very long, very prominently long, whereas the second nerve is very, very short and it's right next to the effector organ. And we saw that these nerves typically did arise from parasympathetic nervous system from the cranial and sacral region. When we look at the sympathetic nerves instead, and nerves that belong to the sympathetic branch of autonomic nervous system, we see that most of these originate either from thoracic or lumbar regions of your spinal cord. We see that these are characterized by very short preganglionic nerve. And we see that we have a second, the postganglionic nerve, that's much, much, much longer that then ends to the target organ. So really the ganglia of the sympathetic nervous system neurons is located close to the spinal cord. We have a short nerve there, and then much, much, much longer nerve, that's the postganglionic nerve. And remember, these sympathetic nerves did arise at the thoracic and lumbar regions of the spinal cord. So interestingly, it's not just the physiological effects that differ between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, it's also the anatomy when we look at those. I also wanted to touch upon quickly on talking about, when we talk about autonomic nervous system, on how it's controlled. And we see control under multiple levels. We see control at the level of brainstem and spinal cord. We see control taking place at the level of hypothalamus and also at the cerebral cortex, so the outermost layer of our cerebral hemispheres. We do see that there might be cerebral input that modifies the activities of autonomic nervous system, but remember, this is going to be subconscious. So this is very much of an autonomic system. So if we look at what happens at the brainstem and spinal cord level, some of the things to consider here is that the functions that are regulated, especially at the brainstem, are vital functions. So things that are needed to keep us alive, like we would see control centers within the brainstem for our heart rate, for our regulation of our blood pressure, and even for our respiratory rate regulation. We will also see at the spinal cord level responses that are autonomic but can be overridden if necessary. So, for example, the urine production and digestive system, for example, emptying the non-digestible material from our body. So I hope that that helps with that concept. If we look at the hypothalamic control, really we've seen multiple times so far that hypothalamus played important role as a kind of a master gland regulating other processes in the body. So we see important things having centers within this area like heart activity, blood pressure, temperature of the body, water balance, endocrine activity. a lot of things that are controlled there at that level. And then we when think of the cortical control, really the connections are and messages are synthesized at this level. And we see that there is some voluntary control that can step in there. So we are aware of the physiological conditions of our body. We do have potential to influence those, even though most of the time a lot of that is automatic. I do here have a kind of a more of a visual representation of everything that we just discussed about the levels of control in autonomic nervous system. Remember that really those essential functions controlled at the brainstem level. We're also here filtering what information comes to the conscious awareness and so on. Those a little bit more complex putting things together functions than happen at the higher levels of the nervous system. That, I believe, brings us nicely to the end of this week's learning material. Next week, we will finish our course's new learning material by focusing on special senses. I'll leave that material for that time. But I think that this is a good kind of an introduction of what we're doing this week and what we will finish our course with. As I said earlier on, I would really greatly appreciate it if you did consider doing the course feedback. It matters a great deal for us. It matters to me personally. I want to do the best job that I possibly can. So in order for me to do the best job, I can be better when I learn what I should keep doing and what I might consider doing differently. I also do want to share what's working well with my supervisors. So please consider if you have had good experiences of completing that survey. And please do remember that I'm offering points for completion of that. But in order to get those points, since it is an anonymous survey that I won't see, I'm asking you to let me know that you completed this survey. And how you can do that is by uploading that screenshot at the very activity area on your Canvas course learning modules for that. Or alternatively, you can also just let me know there if you didn't capture that screenshot that you completed it. So I think that we've done a fairly good job of having a general look of the homework assignments also. Like I said, let's add the course feedback survey to this week's homework. And we have reviewed the key points of this week's chapter. I won't spend time on going through the quiz 15 since that's the only assignment that you have. I think that it is fairly straightforward and it's something that you're familiar on this course at this time. So I'll just let you tackle it on your own. But as always, do remember that I am very much here to help you in your learning process. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I really hope that you have a great Thanksgiving and chance to spend some time taking care of yourself and also hopefully taking care of those who are near and dear to you. We're going to finish this session here. Thank you again. I look forward to interacting with you in these virtual learning spaces. And as always, I'm only a message away if there's anything I can do to help you on this chapter's material. Until we see next time, thank you and bye.